So you want to read more. Don't worry, I got you. I don't have that much more of an intro, so we're just going to get into the tips. My first tip is to ask yourself, why? You know you want to read more, but do you know why? Because there's different reasons why one might want to read more. Maybe you remember really loving to read as a child, but you've lost a little bit of that love as an adult. Maybe you spend a little bit too much time on your phone and you're looking for a hobby that takes you away from a screen. Maybe you already do read some and you really enjoy yourself when you do, so you want to read more, but then you're struggling to motivate yourself to pick up your book as often as you'd like to. Maybe you want to read some nonfiction and learn a little bit. There's a zillion reasons why somebody might want to read more. And if you don't really have a tangible reason why, then it's hard to know where to start. Reading is a skill as much as it's a hobby, and like anything, you can approach it in a way where you're likely to have more success, and you can approach it in a way where you're less likely to have success. Knowing why you want to read more, or what it is that you are struggling with when it comes to reading, will probably give you an indication of how you need to shift your approach in order to read more. I'm going to be giving a wide range of tips, so whatever your reason is, you probably will find a tip or two that will be helpful to you. And I'll throw a little asterisk in at the end. I don't want to make it seem like I'm discouraging people from reading, but I also think that we hold reading on a really high pedestal as a hobby, and I don't necessarily know that that needs to be so. If you don't like reading that much, then you don't like reading that much, and that's also okay. It's not necessarily a better use of your time as other hobbies. It's just a hobby, right? So if it's not one that you enjoy, then maybe that's okay too. Next, we have let yourself be bad at it if it's been a while since you've done it. Reading is a little bit of a brain workout, and certainly in today's day and age where everything has a screen, even the new refrigerators. Why would my fridge need a screen? Your phone is designed to be addicting, and social media is designed to be addicting. There are teams and teams and teams of people who work for these companies whose entire job is to figure out how to get you to spend time on the app longer. As a result, our attention spans have just been decimated. And I'm speaking from experience. Reading is a brain workout, and it's also somewhat low on the sensory scale. So if it's not something you do often, you probably will struggle to focus on it. And that's okay. That makes perfect sense. I just had a conversation with someone the other day where they were talking about this, about how they really want to read more and they really enjoy reading, but they feel like they can only focus for like 10 or 15 pages and that's all they have in them, and then they get distracted. I said, well, then I would just read 10 or 15 pages a day. I think over time you'll find that you'll be able to read more and more as you train yourself, right? If somebody told you that they hadn't been to the gym in years and so they had signed up for a CrossFit class, you might be like, whoa, hang on a minute. But what if today we did a few push-ups and a few crunches and took a little walk? What if we started there? You need to find your reading version of a few push-ups, a few crunches, and a little walk. And then you work your way to CrossFit. If that's your goal. My fitness goal isn't CrossFit, to be honest. We have all experienced the little demon that sits on your shoulder and tells you need to be good at everything you do or there's no point. And especially because we learn to read as a child, and I think also especially because we associate literacy with intelligence, admitting to ourselves that we're struggling a little bit to read and we need to train our brain a little bit to read more, can feel like a knock on our intelligence, but that's not what it is. Reading is a skill. Any skill, if you don't do it, you're gonna get worse at it. I can almost guarantee you a third grader would be faster at a times table than me, and I have a degree in computer science. It's not that I'm bad at math, I just haven't done a times table since I was in third grade. That particular skill is not in my arsenal at this point in time. But all of that to say, it's okay if you need to train yourself a little bit. It doesn't mean you're not smart, it just means you haven't read a book in a while. One thing I wanted to add, make sure you're patient with yourself as well. I don't know about you guys, but every time I try to build a new habit, I end up putting the pressure on myself to build the system perfectly the first time around, so I don't have to waste time with that pesky trial and error. And so if I struggle to maintain the habit, I end up giving up on it really quickly instead of starting over and trying again. This can both lead to paralysis for me starting new hobbies because I need to figure out the perfect way to start before I can get started. And it also leads to this feeling of defeat when the system doesn't work. So it'll be my first time trying to build a habit and then it won't stick. And I'll think to myself, well, I guess I'll never do it. So remember, if you try to build a new habit like reading and realize a week or two later that you haven't stuck with it, don't get discouraged. Don't think that that means you're never going to be a reader. Don't beat yourself up. Just start again. So if you relate to that and you find yourself struggling with knowing where to begin on a new hobby, this video sponsor Skillshare really helped me with that. It feels like every New Year's, I have a laundry list of hobbies I want to try, and I never get around to doing any of them because I just don't know where to begin. So I decided to tackle that start anxiety. With the class, Everyone Can Jump, Be Productive in 20 Minutes, Learn Time Management, and Find Motivation. This is by an artist named Fab who usually teaches watercolor classes, but he struggles with the same motivation challenges that I have, so he decided to teach a course on the system that he uses to keep himself on track. He was super funny, and like with any Skillshare class, this class involved a project that helped me apply my learnings right away. And already I'm noticing a huge difference in my ability to check tasks off my to-do list. I think our brains work exactly the same way, and his system's kind of genius. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers classes in a wide variety of courses. You can work on your writing, you can work on your journaling. Each class has a project, so it gives you the perfect place to start on any goals you have for the new year. And you can make achieving your goals even easier by gifting a friend a membership so that the two of you can tackle new hobbies together. And the good news for you is that the first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Plus, you can gift memberships to your friends and family and buy people gift cards. So click that link in the description to get started today. And this goes hand in hand with my next tip, which is to read genres you like. Because much like we hold reading on a pedestal, I think we hold different genres on a pedestal as well. And there's a belief that reading a nonfiction or a really intellectual literary fiction or a classic is a more productive use of your time than reading a smutty, goofy, silly contemporary romance or a horror or a cozy mystery. But not all of your relaxation time needs to be productive. And I'm guilty of this. I do this all the time. I'm notorious for trying to min-max my relaxation time. In my head, I'm like, this is the time I set aside for relaxing, so I need to relax as much as possible. It's okay to just rot sometimes. Yes, reading nonfiction is great. Reading classics is great. Reading literary fiction is great. Again, I'm not trying to discourage people from learning and educating themselves. I don't want that to seem like it's the message of the video. But if that's all you have and those aren't the genres that you really enjoy reading that really fill your cup, then maybe those aren't the books you read when you're relaxing. Maybe those are books that you read more in a setting where you're prepared to sit down and learn, and you're going to do that for a very specific period of time, especially nonfiction. And maybe the books you read for fun are a little bit more relaxing. For me, I feel like this was the big problem when I was in a years-long reading slump. I was a monster when I was a child when it came to reading. You could not pull my face out of a book. And then for years in there, you could not put my face into a book. Didn't pick one up. And then a dear friend of mine introduced me to Outlander, and I realized I love romance. And the rest is history. During that period of time, all I had on my shelf were non-fictions and classics and all these books that smart people would read. I wanted to be smart, and so I wanted to read smart people books. And so those were the only options I had, and then I just didn't read. My next tip is to DNF your books. DNF stands for did not finish, just in case any of you are not in the booktube community, you don't know the lingo. And this is one I feel very passionately about. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've been having a conversation. I'm not naming names, but if I were to name names, my mom, dad, and best friend's names would all be on the list. They always tell me, ugh, I'm just slogging through this book right now that I'm really hating. So I honestly haven't picked it up in a little bit, but I'm just trying to get through it so I can move on to something I'm gonna like more. And when I'm like, well, why don't you put it down? Why don't you move on now to something that you might enjoy reading more? They go, no, I'm not gonna do that. And when I see you 3 months from now, I will in fact tell you that I have not read a page of that book, but that I'm still determined to finish it before I pick up another book. And if that sounds like you, let me convince you otherwise. And because I have so many people who I love dearly who have this mindset on reading, I have perfected my arguments against it. And for some reason, they still don't work. Nobody listens to me. The reason why DNFing a book is so hard is because of the sunk cost fallacy, which is used to refer to things that maybe don't really make sense to continue, but the person does it anyway because they feel that they've already invested a lot of money or time into it, and they don't want to feel like they wasted that money or that they wasted that time. To that I say, I'm gonna say it, and I don't want anyone to feel called out. This is supposed to be a helpful and nice and fun video, but it's called a fallacy for a reason. It is a logical fallacy. It's used to refer to times when it doesn't really make sense for the person to continue doing the thing, but they do it anyway. That's why we call it sunk cost fallacy. I don't want to make it sound like it doesn't suck when you've spent money on a book and you're not enjoying it and you want to enjoy it. You thought you were going to enjoy it, but you're just not. And I've certainly had my moments where I've tried to push through a book just to get to the end, to see if it gets better, especially because reading is such a goal-oriented hobby. Reading one book is a tangible thing. It has a beginning and an end, and so you can count it as a number in your tracking, and then you know how many books you've read, and a lot of people have reading goals, and so if you've read 100 pages of a 300-page book, then sometimes you get in your head that if you were to put that book down and start another 300-page book over, then you'd have to read another 100 pages to get yourself back to the point you're at now. Whereas if you could just push through those 200 pages, then you could check that one off your list, add the number to your yearly goal, and move on. Here's the kicker though. If you remember from me kind of recounting this conversation I've had with many of my loved ones many a time, it almost always ends with me asking them months later if they ever finished that book. And the response is no, but they still haven't moved on to another one because they haven't finished that book yet. In my experience, this is the number one thing that sends people into reading slumps, is when you're reading a book and you're not enjoying it, but you really want to finish that one so that you can move on. Instead of just putting the book down to move on, you're not going to want to pick it up because you're probably not going to enjoy the time you're spending reading it. And so your body is going to want to do anything else with its relaxation time instead of that. And so then you just avoid reading. It's counterintuitive, but if reading a lot of books matters to you, I actually think it's more conducive to that goal to just put down the ones that you're not really enjoying and you don't feel called to pick up, and pick up another one that you are really going to enjoy, because then you will want to read it. And so you will look for time in your schedule to read, as opposed to having to force yourself and motivate yourself to do it when it's something you don't want to do. I'll just go back to the fact that reading is supposed to be fun. It's your hobby and you're supposed to enjoy the books that you're reading. I could give you a million other tips, and I have plenty more. So don't worry, video's not over yet. But the number one thing that is going to get you to read is for you to want to read. If you are hooked on a book, if you're loving it, if you want to know what happens, if it's a genre you really enjoy, so that you look forward to it, so that it's something that you want to do and it's something you want to make time for. So you got to pick genres you like, and you got to DNF the books you don't want to read. My next advice is do set a reading goal, or don't. This one's confusing. Allow me to break it down. A lot of people in these types of videos recommend setting a reading goal because then you have something to work towards and you can see yourself make your way towards the milestone. And as human beings, that is a very motivating thing, which I think is great advice for a lot of people out there. Personally, that advice did not work for me. I have ADHD, and a very strange experience that I kept having is that a new year would start, I would set a new reading goal, I would blast through books at the beginning of the year, and then I would be close to hitting my reading goal in July or August. And then in my mind, reading became about hitting the goal more so than it became about just enjoying reading. And I would think, oh, I gotta pick up a book. I'm so close to my goal. I've got to pick up a book. But that for some reason made me not want to do it and not want to read. And I would end up barely hitting my reading goal because in the last month of the year, I forced myself to read the 3 or 4 books I was away from my goal just so that I could hit it. And so in 2023, I'm pretty sure it was, I decided to try not setting a reading goal. And I did read a lot less that first year, but I've made my way back up to around where I was setting my reading goals, which is 40-ish books a year for both 2024 and 2025. And I just think it works better for me this way. Even though it hasn't changed the number of books I've read really, it's removed the stress from the situation for me. I'm not worried about hitting the reading goal. I just read when I want to read. And that means I read a certain number of books a year, and I'll find out what that number is at the end of the year. So I guess the question you have to ask yourself is putting some kind of pressure on yourself to read to a certain number going to motivate you to read, or is it going to stress you out? If you find yourself more motivated the closer you get to hitting a goal, then setting a goal is probably a good idea. But if you find yourself actually less motivated the closer you get to hitting a goal, then maybe not setting a goal is the right plan. My next tip is a great one. I'm kind of feeling like I should have put it earlier in the video, but I actually think this is the best tip I have for getting yourself to sit down for long reading sessions, and that's to set a cozy atmosphere. I already talked about how your phone is an addiction machine, and it's all these senses. It's just lights and sound and music. And then you pick up a book, and it's like, I just I still have a Christmas Carol sitting here from when I filmed that, and I just opened it to a random page to read a random line. I was gonna do a bit, okay, but the line that I opened it to is, "You bad boy," said Mr. Tetterby. Charles, I didn't know this book was like that. What I was gonna say is, going from all of that sensory information to, he might have asked, "What is it?" even had he seen it well, as presently he did when he stood looking at it, gathered up in its corner. There's just a lot less of that sensory information, and so I highly recommend setting some kind of relaxing, lyric-free music. I love ambiance videos. If you go through my YouTube history, it's like 90% ambiance videos. Reading on a snowy hill in the wind, click. Rainy afternoon by the window, click. I'm like that dog with the treat button. I'm like, give me the ambiance. But if you don't have YouTube Premium, then a lot of the music streaming apps also have pre-made playlists that have relaxing music or lo-fi beats. Basically whatever helped you study or helps you study, maybe you're presently in college. Listening to that same style of music when you're reading can also help you focus on the reading. Make sure you light a candle, get some nice smell in the air. I'm also a very big fan of having a cozy reading spot, and I have very strict qualifications for what counts as a cozy reading spot. Good lighting, obvious first one if you don't have an e-reader. You need to be able to sit in multiple positions comfortably so that you can shift around if you're going to be sitting there a while. And you also need to have a place to rest your drink or snack that is within reach and within reach without crunch. If you have to crunch to reach drink or snack, not good cozy reading spot. This is very important. You're laying, you're reading, you're in the middle of a scene, all of a sudden your body's like, hey, I'm kind of thirsty, I should get a sip of my drink. Crunch, reach for drink. This pulls you out of the reading experience. You're gonna take a sip of your water, you're gonna put it back down, and you're gonna pick up your phone that's sitting right there. And you're gonna check it, and then you're gonna scroll TikTok for like 10 minutes, and you're gonna be like, wait, shit, I was reading. If you have to crunch and take your eyes off the page to see where you're reaching, you are pulling yourself out of the reading experience, and that means you'll have to put yourself back into the reading experience, and you might not do that. But not only that, it's just annoying when you're in the middle of a really good part and your body has some sort of need. Like, excuse me, I'm reading. I don't care if you have to go to the bathroom, okay? There's only one bed. And so it's nice to be able to reach your drink, especially if it's in your periphery. I might add that to my checklist, actually. So you have your book and you're reading it, and if you can see your drink and you don't have to crunch to reach it, then you can just reach out for it, grab it, take a sip, put it back down. Never had to take your eyes off the page. Same with snack. Can snack. Never take your eyes off the page. This is pivotal. And finally, I just gave you that whole example holding up the book, but I actually do recommend putting a pillow on your lap and then resting the book on the pillow. This also works with e-readers because then you don't have to crane your neck down so far if you're resting it on your lap, but you also don't have to hold it up in front of you because if you're reading for a really long period of time, eventually your hands are going to get tired or your arms are going to get tired holding up the book and you're going to get uncomfortable, and all of these things stack up. And eventually your brain will just say to you, we don't want to read anymore. So just to go through the checklist one last time, you want whatever cozy music in the background that helps you focus, be it lo-fi beats, classical, whatever it might be. Good lighting, candle lit, drink or snack within reach without need for crunch. Place where you can sit in multiple positions comfortably, and you're golden. Blink and you'll have read for hours. This next tip is coming purely from personal experience. You might need glasses. That happened to me. When I was a child, I used to get headaches sometimes when I would read for really long periods of time, and my mom took me to the eye doctor, and it turns out that I had a very, very slight reading prescription that made it so that I could focus my eyes on the words. But if I did it for enough time in a row, then I would get a headache because my brain got tired. But I was a heathen about reading back in those days, so I would just give myself a headache. So I had to wear glasses when I was reading. And I thought I grew out of that because I stopped getting the headaches. But at some point in my 20s, I was finding myself not really wanting to read. I wasn't really picking up books that often. I just thought I was in a little bit of a slump, you know? But then I started to kind of struggle to focus on my work computer, and I was like, oh, maybe I need glasses. And I went to the eye doctor, and it turns out not only do I need glasses, but I've needed glasses this whole time. Never grew out of it. My prescription's the same. I just stopped reading for long enough sessions to give myself a headache. And now I can't imagine not having them, especially for long reading sessions. In fact, I had one day recently where I didn't have any glasses available to me because I've misplaced a pair of mine somewhere in my house. They're in my house. I know they're in my house. I just don't know where they are. And then the other pair, one of the little nose pads fell off. And I made it one whole day before I took the one with the nose pad that had fallen off to the eye doctor to get it fixed. I was like, how did I ever live without glasses? I'm struggling to focus on anything. And honestly, in the moment, I don't know if it's just my ADHD, but it just feels like I'm struggling to focus. I just find myself wanting to look away from the computer or look away from the book. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I have this aversion to it. I want to look away, but I recognize the feeling now and I'm like, no, I just need to put my glasses on. So hey, maybe you need to get your eyes checked. And my last and final tip is to build community around reading. This can be done in very many ways. A lot of book internet is exactly that. A lot of us get into this because we want to talk to other people about what we're reading, and we want to talk to other people who read those same books. So engaging with the online community, watching content surrounding it, but also buddy reading or starting a book club with your friends or joining a book club in your area. All of these things can be great ways to get yourself into reading because you're motivated to do it, because there's a little bit of social pressure to do it, and it's a lot more fun. Whether or not you enjoyed the book or didn't enjoy it, discussing it with other people who have read it is truly the joy of life. There is nothing in this world that I love more than sitting and yapping for hours and hours and hours upon books that we've read. And also, don't think of your reading sessions as something that has to be a solitary activity. One of the things that got me back into reading voraciously, one of my old roommates also loved reading. And so what she and I would do is just park on the sofas, put a little bit of nice music on, light a candle, and read our respective books. And she and I had slightly different tastes. Weirdly, we both read romance, but we were almost never interested in the same romances. And so anytime something crazy would happen, we would just be like, oh my God. And so it was kind of like you're reading two books at once, because then you're reading your book, but you're also reading your friend's book by proxy. Even if you don't live with people, if you have another friend that's trying to get into reading or that likes to read, and you know you're not going to read the book they're reading, then I highly recommend setting up a little reading night and doing something like that where you and another person are just sitting there and you're both reading, and when something crazy happens that you want to talk about, then you can just be like, oh my God, you're never going to believe what just happened. There's only one bed. And your friend can be like, oh, there's only one bed. You're kidding. Whatever are they going to do? And it just makes it so fun. You can also just do this with whoever you live with, even if they don't read. I think most people do that, but I'll just throw it on there as a tip if you've never thought about doing that. If somebody else is in the room with you and you get to a really good part and you're like, whoa, you could just be like, dude, there's only one bed. I guess what I'm generally saying is reading does not have to be exclusively a solitary experience. In the moment, you can be reading around other people and interacting with those people while you're reading, or you and your friend could buddy read the same book, or you could join a book club, or you can seek out online content about the book that you're reading once you're done with it. You could subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would help you build community. Just find a way to build a little bit of a community surrounding reading and to not make it such a solitary hobby for yourself. Those are all my tips today. Hopefully you found one that was kind of helpful. If you guys have any of your own tips, feel free to share them in the comments. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!